Obviously, the question of Iranian influence is always an issue in Bahrain. And I'm not going to talk a lot about Iran today because that's a whole other topic. But Iran has always had interests in the Gulf and throughout the region to be the country with a lot of influence and weight. And of course, now with Iraq, they have a great opening. So while they're not the main instigator, I don't subscribe to the fact that everything that happens within the Shia Bahraini population is caused by Iran, but they do have interests in keeping that unrest going. Of course, Bahrain is also the home of the Fifth Fleet, so the U.S. also looks at Bahrain with a great deal of interest. Jordan, again, I think the King Abdullah is under no threat there. I think he's seen very much as a unifying force because of the population of Jordan being what it is. I think the king is always an important role in terms of keeping that balance between the Palestinian Jordanian population, part of the population, versus the East Bankers. But he has had, obviously the Islamic Action Front in Jordan is quite active, and they've been really the main group that's been demonstrating in recent weeks. And the king, of course, as we all know, changed the prime minister, and a new cabinet is now in place, and he's asked them to focus on creating jobs. I think we will probably see some political reforms being accelerated in Jordan. Maybe one of the issues that always comes up in Jordan is the freedom of the press. So they're going to have to loosen that up a little bit, I'm sure, and also try to make some changes to their electoral laws, which would please the IAF. They've managed to keep the Islamists out of parliament by some of the rules, election rules. So what's the impact of what happened in Egypt and Tunisia on the region? I think it's actually quite strong. I think what's happened in Egypt and Tunisia will be inspirational, be copycat issues. I mean, people really look, especially at Egypt. Tunisia very much more of an influence in North Africa, but when you want to look at the Levant and the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, the influence there will be whatever happens in Egypt. The experience in Egypt is going to have a huge impact on that part of the world, in my view. And if we don't see upheavals, we will see at least the regimes accelerating their own reforms and their efforts so that they don't have to face that kind of turmoil. So the reaction thus far, Saudi Arabia, for example, when King Abdullah came back from Morocco, announced an incredible $36 billion reform program, mostly economic, though, mostly on, again, making it easier for people to own homes, property, to get jobs, public services, etc. The UAE, to a lesser extent, but also we saw some talk about changing the way the Federal National Council is elected. In Kuwait, they announced $3,500 bonus for every Kuwaiti national. I was in Kuwait at the time, and the Kuwaitis they're great. The Kuwaitis are wonderful. They were making jokes about that. They said, well, Egypt can have a revolution, but we get the money. So they were very funny about that. But in the countries in the GCC where you have minority nationals, populations, I think their biggest threat whenever they think about political reform is how do we deal with the demographic issues? Because the occasional laborers who come in and out every 6 months are not the issue, but you've got populations, for example, in the UAE who are third and fourth generation Pakistani or Indian or Arab, and so when you start talking about political reform, it does get very dicey for them when they are less than 20% of the population. So they focus more on the economic side. Israel, impact on Israel. I think a very important piece of what's going on here, Israel, of course, is very concerned. There's a lot of nervousness over the loss of, certainly, the stability of dealing with same old Mubarak for the last 30 years when it comes to their relationship with Egypt and their first peace partner. So they understand. I think they realize and they understand that any new government that's going to be more accountable to their constituencies is going to be a little more difficult to deal with than a government that didn't really have to deal with being elected. So, for example, I only put this out for example, what happened on the Gaza border in 2009 when Israel and Hamas were going at it, and the Egyptian government actually shut down the border on their side of the border with Gaza, and didn't allow any, not only weapons and radicals, but any, even humanitarian people to come through the border. No Egyptian ruler, if he's truly elected, is going to be able to do that. That was so unpopular, not only throughout the Arab world, but also inside Egypt. So Israel has some legitimate concerns, and both as they look at Egypt and hopefully, and also as they look at Jordan. But I'm hopeful that what's happening in the Middle East will also hopefully inspire a better opportunity between the Israelis and the Palestinians, because I think the Israelis are smart enough to realize that if you take away that issue, then it will take away a lot of the potential problems that will arise. So maybe we will see an acceleration of reaching an agreement with the Palestinians. That's my optimistic side. My cynical side says, well, we've been talking about that for a long, long time, but who knows? Impact on global economy. I don't want to go into too much detail. You're all businessmen and women, so you know more than I do that what's happening in the Middle East has direct impact, not just on the economy, but regionally, but also globally. The price of oil, as it continues to go up, will certainly have an impact on our own economy if it shoots up beyond 4. I just looked at the tank yesterday. It was already at 390 or something like that, so we're getting close. The international response to a new Middle East will be very interesting to see. I can tell you from my career as a diplomat, all our bilateral relationships, if we have to change them the way we have to change the way we deal with Egypt, it's going to be a very new world for the State Department and for the U.S. government writ large, because, you know, when you're dealing with the same person for 30 years, although we change, we inherit the portfolio, if you will. I mean, I walked through our embassy in Cairo once, and we had this incredible photographic display of, you know, all Egyptian American contacts, and Mubarak was almost in every single picture. But in our American side, it was, you know, Reagan, and so we changed all the time, and it was just continually changing, but the same guy, Mubarak. And so for us, the bilateral relationship with Egypt, for example, or Tunisia, is going to be a dramatic change. We're going to have to rethink how we do business with them. We're not going to be able to take it for granted. We won't know the people as well as we knew the old people. So it's going to be quite an interesting transition. And I think as they become more democratic, as they incorporate more of their constituencies and their social political realities, it will be important for the United States to keep up with that. I'm not saying we're not capable of it. I think we certainly are. We do it everywhere else. But for a long time, we've looked at that part of the world as kind of, well, we have security issues, we have intelligence issues, and forget everything else. And now it's going to be a much more complicated package. So it will be interesting. I think we will see, certainly in the near term, a lot more economic assistance flowing into the region from Europe and from the U.S. In terms of assistance, particularly to countries like Egypt and Tunisia. And I would argue that actually we should focus on those two countries that have such a promising outlook, and try to make them the model, try to make those help them become success stories. I don't think we should get involved to the point of looking like we're dictating or taking over, because that's the kiss of death. But I think we should certainly be encouraging and promoting support to the right people as they take power. So is this really a new era? I'm sure there are many people who are today writing op-ed pieces. I've already seen a few that, after all, this is going to go the wrong way. The Islamists are going to take over. There'll be one democratic election, and then we'll have, very conservative fundamentalist types in power. We're just replacing Mubarak with another autocrat. That's a scenario that's possible. I don't see it right now going in that direction. I think that there will be a lot of bumps on the road, and I think every country will be slightly different. But I am more optimistic than that. I think this is a real opportunity. I think the young people who put themselves and their lives and their family on the line in both those countries, in Egypt and Tunisia, are not going to go away. And I am very much, actually, very happy to see, especially in Egypt now, every Friday they come back to Maidan Tahrir, and their motto is, we don't want them to forget that we are here. We like what they're doing, but we don't want them to forget that we are still watching. So I think there's a dedication here that I didn't expect to see, and I am uplifted by it. So I'm going to end on an optimistic note and say, I think it is a new era. We don't know maybe quite how it will turn out, but I think there's reason for optimism. With that, I will stop talking and look forward to hearing from you.